Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the GSMC Football Podcast presented by the Golden State Media Concepts. I'm your host, Wyatt Krieger. Today, we've got a great episode for you. The NFL schedule was just released. The dust has officially settled on the NFL draft, so we are going to be fully immersed into training camp and off-season coverage. Rookie mini camps have already started throughout the league. I know Zach Wilson was already throwing to his new teammates in New York this week. But we've got a great episode. I'm going to give you some games to look for after the schedule release that the NFL makes a big deal every single year. There's a lot of Aaron Rodgers drama and a lot more news coming out this week, so I'll get into all of that and all of the different scenarios that can come with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL to ever do it, and why he wants to leave, and why he is really disgruntled in Green Bay. We've also got some draft grades later in the show, now that we can kind of sit back and look at these teams' drafts from afar. So I'll get into those. And then we've got some Deshaun Watson discussions. I'll break down the age-old question of whether rookie quarterbacks should start right away, because I think that's becoming a really hot topic throughout the league, with all the rookie quarterbacks going to their new teams and teams kind of figuring out that balance of what to do with their rookie quarterback, when to put him in, when's the right time, and all of the circumstances that come from those decisions, because it's a big one nowadays in the NFL, as every team is trying to get their quarterback position right. But first and foremost, let's get into some NFL news. The NFL schedule, it's officially out. I think this is always funny because, throughout the week they're building up hype, like, oh, the schedule release, it's Thursday, look out, schedule is being released soon. Come watch our NFL schedule release show where we break down for 30 minutes to an hour about every single game that's coming out. And it's always funny just because it gets leaked about 2 days at least before the schedule comes out anyways. I don't know who leaks it or why these teams provide all this information, because obviously the NFL doesn't want them to. The NFL wants them to keep it under wraps for their show, but it always gets released a few days before. At least some of the games get released a few days before. So shout out to that guy, whoever is leaking these schedules, because no one wants to wait, and no one's watching that NFL schedule release show. No one's watching that. So I'm going to look at some of my favorite games throughout the 2021 season, just at a first glance. Obviously, this is kind of dumb just because, so much can change, but it's fun. It's fun to predict. It's fun to look at these games. A lot of really good quarterback matchups this year is one thing that I noticed, but it's always fun to kind of point out which games are going to be good. And we have somewhat of an idea. We know what quarterbacks are stars, what rookies provide some intriguing matchups, and what teams overall are going to be competitive, but so much can happen with injuries and just the overall up and down nature that goes on throughout an NFL season. So I'm going to get into some of my favorite games. There's a lot of work that goes into it too, which I think is pretty interesting. There's a lot of data and analytics that hardworking people at the NFL are searching for and finding the best possible ways to get as much viewers as possible for these games. And the primetime decision making too it takes a lot of tough decisions, a lot of analytics overall, and it's a numbers game. So they're trying to find which teams kind of create the most intrigue for those primetime games. But nonetheless, I've listed some of my top 10. This is no order, but my top 10 favorite games for the 2021 season. These are games that kind of caught my eye this year. First and foremost, I had to do this opening week. The first game of the NFL year, Thursday night game, always features the previous Super Bowl champion, which I think is something that's a kind of a cool tradition. But we have the Buccaneers taking on the Dallas Cowboys in Tampa Bay. First game of the year. It's always super exciting. I also just think this is a great matchup overall from two really good teams that I think are going to win their divisions in 2021. We got Dak Prescott's the storylines. His first game back after that gruesome ankle injury, and he was playing so well in 2020, which is just what pains me the most of when I saw that ankle injury. So he's going to be ready. He's facing off against the greatest football player of all time in Tom Brady, who is going to look to defend his title. The Buccaneers have pretty much brought back the same exact team as last year, so they are going to be good. The Cowboys are going to be good. They got Micah Parsons in the draft. I'm really excited to see him too. And overall, how that Cowboys defense fares against the air raid attack of the Buccaneers, it'll be a great first test for that defense and for Mike McCarthy's Cowboys. So overall, Buccaneers Cowboys, I think this is going to be a great game, and I can't wait till that opening night on Thursday. So first primetime game off the board. And we've got another great one. Week 5, the Bills are taking on the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. A rematch of the AFC Championship game last year, which was a great game. So many points scored. Just a star-studded matchup across the board. The Bills, I think, are probably the second best, maybe the third best team in the NFL right now, or at worst in the AFC. They got better throughout this offseason, added Emmanuel Sanders, fixed up a lot of those defensive issues, added Greg Rousseau out of Miami to shore up that D-line, and then Josh Allen, can he make even another jump from that MVP caliber season? I think by week 5, we'll see if Josh Allen is making that jump or if he's somewhat stayed the same or if he's even regressed, which I don't think is going to happen in Buffalo. But nonetheless, you've got two of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL, two of the biggest arms in the NFL. These guys are going to be throwing it 50, 70 yards down the field every time. Every series, we'll see some big plays happening. So you can't go wrong with Bills at Chiefs in Week 5. Week 9, the Packers head to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Now, this is very contingent on whether or not Aaron Rodgers is there, but this is going to be a great game if he is, because you've got two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, another great quarterback matchup, the most talented arms I've ever seen, the most talented passers of the football I've ever seen in my entire life. And I think a lot of people regard Aaron Rodgers as one of the best passers of all time. And then you've got Patrick Mahomes coming in as he's done things at the NFL level that no one has ever seen before. Even when you watch that Super Bowl loss, there were probably 3 or 4 plays that he made that were either dropped or something happened on the play by the receiver, whether it was hitting Tyreek Hill's helmet or whatnot, where those are plays that just no one has ever come close to making. Plays where he's completely diving across the field, fully parallel to the ground, and throwing it sidearm. The arm angles, both of these guys can do some absolute magic with the football. So you have to tune in Week 9 for the Packers at Chiefs. My 4th game I've got for this NFL season is the Week 16. Week 16 might not be too many playoff implications for this game, but it's the Jacksonville Jaguars against the New York Jets. And I think this is a great game just because of all the storylines. The number 1 overall pick versus the number 2 overall pick. Always cool when this happens. I don't think the Jags and the Jets squaring off would ever be on this list of top games for the NFL season. But give credit to these two teams' front office and their organizations for getting their quarterbacks for the future and providing some hope for both NFL fans to watch a good product, and then their team's fans for being able to just kind of have a quarterback that they can rely on for the future and have hope for the future, because this game, there's sure to be just a lot of intrigue around this game, depending on how Trevor Lawrence is doing at this point. I don't think either of these teams will be in the playoff scenarios, but you never know. And we'll have Urban Meyer, new head coach, against Robert Saleh, new head coach. And I'm excited to see Zach Wilson too. I'm really excited to see how Zach Wilson comes out this season. But hopefully at this point they've got the rust off their belts. They've made at least 13 to 15 starts already, hopefully, at this point in the year. And I'm really excited for that Week 16 matchup because it's personal. It's personal for a lot of these quarterbacks. And then when you're going up against your kind of draft counterparts, I bet there's a little more fuel to the fire. So I'm excited for that. I've got another Jaguars game on this list. Who would have thought we would have 2 Jacksonville Jaguars games so far? Because the Jaguars and Bengals, I have them in their Week 4 Thursday Night Football matchup. We've got Trevor Lawrence. We've got Joe Burrow. It's a rematch of the 2019 College Football National Championship game, which I'm really excited for. Joe Burrow coming back off his ACL injury. This is Week 4, so it's going to be earlier in the year. Thursday Night Football, a little tune-up before the chaos that is NFL Sunday. And, again, storylines. I think this is just, you got the national championship, 2 guys that competed against each other in college, 2 number 1 overall picks in consecutive years. And this will be an early look at Trevor Lawrence, an early primetime look at Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to be glued to watching him in the first few weeks of the season just because I want to see how he's going to do. But Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, you can't go wrong with that because I love Joe Burrow. He's one of my favorite young quarterbacks in the NFL. My next game that I'm going to get to is the Ravens at Browns. This is strictly not only because these 2 teams are going to be really good this year, but it was one of the best football games I've ever seen when they played on Monday Night Football last year. You had Lamar, Baker trading plays, huge plays back and forth. Lamar getting hurt, going to the locker room, and then only for Trace McSorley to come in, get a first down. He gets hurt. Lamar comes back running from the locker room, scores the go-ahead touchdown on a crazy play on 4th down to Marquise Brown. It was just ridiculous watching that. It was incredible entertainment. That's why people like me watch the NFL. It's just because it's the best form of entertainment, and it's true, and it's real, and it's live, and it's all happening, and you just don't know what to expect. But this game was high scoring. The Browns, every time you thought the Ravens were going to pull away, the Browns would come back, make some big plays. Kareem Hunt, I remember, had, I believe, the tying touchdown, or it might have been the go-ahead touchdown late in the game just before Justin Tucker, the best kicker I've ever seen in the NFL, hitting the game winner. So that was really cool. Overall, just the division games, you can't go wrong. And Lamar and Baker making plays back and forth. Week 14, that's going to be a good one. No matter what, no matter where those 2 teams are at that point in the year, I think that's just going to be a fantastic game. So Week 5, we've got the Rams at the Seahawks. I really can't wait to see Matt Stafford in the NFL. We'll get a look at him on Sunday Night Football Week 1, but Matt Stafford, not in the NFL, for the Los Angeles Rams, in that Sean McVay offense. He's got a new scheme, new fit, and this is exciting. The Rams and Seahawks games are always good. Sometimes they're defensive battles. Sometimes they're more offensive games. Last year, it was a lot of defense, a lot of really good defense being played. But I think this Matt Stafford-led offense is going to be a lot more dynamic than we saw with Jared Goff. just from a pure arm talent capabilities, what Stafford can do, throwing the ball downfield and being more accurate consistently is what Sean McVay really needs. And then going up against the Seahawks, Russell Wilson, there was some drama early in the offseason on whether or not he wanted to stay in Seattle, but they figured that out. The Seahawks are always going to be a good team because you have a great head coach in Pete Carroll. That defense really started to pick it up towards the end of last season, but it's whether that team can kind of just put all of it together at once is going to be interesting to watch. So Week 5, Rams at Seahawks. I can't wait for that game. Week 4, we've got another primetime game, and this one is probably my favorite on this list. This is a really exciting game. It is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the New England Patriots in Foxborough. Tom Brady coming back to New England for the first time since leaving. Just so much intrigue, so many storylines behind this game. And it's just going to be remarkable to me because you've got Bill Belichick, who you know wants to prove this year that he can win without Tom Brady. You know that's in the back of his mind. And obviously, this last season didn't go the way he wanted it to. It's going to be interesting to see that leash with Cam Newton and Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones is destined to sit for a while, just for the sole fact of learning this offense. But I really hope Cam Newton has a bounce back year, another year to get more comfortable in this offense. He finally has some weapons. Their defense is sure to be just stout, and I think Bill Belichick will be able to kind of scheme up a lot of. It's just that battle between Belichick's defense and Tom Brady, two of the best overall just game planners in the history of the sport. I think that's incredible. That's going to be incredible to watch. Again, so many storylines. Tom Brady's going to be competitive. Bill Belichick really wants to win, and again, I'm just thinking Tom Brady is going to be doing everything he can throughout that week of preparation to find holes in the first 3 weeks of the season and find holes in that Patriots defense. And then Bill Belichick will be doing the same. One of the best game planners of all time on defense to just slow down that air raid attack, cause chaos, get some pressure on Tom, make him uncomfortable. That game is going to be so fun to watch. I can't wait. My 9th favorite game I saw of the long list of NFL schedule games was the Chiefs at Ravens. Again, quarterback matchup. That's why we watch the NFL, to watch the best young quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. I don't know if there's much more that needs to be said based off of that. And then you just have they've been two of the most consistent teams in the AFC for the last 5 to 10 years. So Chiefs at Ravens, week 2. We're getting that matchup early on, and that's just two young stars in the NFL. And then my final game is another primetime. It is week 1. It is Sunday Night Football. It is the Chicago Bears versus the Rams. Now, this is also pretty contingent on whether or not Justin Fields is starting week 1 for Chicago. But the more I look at it as a Bears fan, that's what I think is going to happen. We never know. Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace said Andy Dalton's our starter. They said that right after the draft. They said they talked to him. They said there's been good conversation back and forth. But at the end of the day, if they get to training camp and Andy Dalton's still Andy Dalton, and then Justin Fields is doing what he did in college, I just don't see a way that Andy Dalton starts week 1. Now, I could be getting a little too antsy for this. The fan in me really just wants to see Justin Fields play right away. But overall, we're likely looking at a mid-season entry for Justin Fields. But again, I think he's one of the more intelligent quarterbacks in the draft. I think he's one of the more NFL-ready quarterbacks from the draft, the more you look at it with the experience and the talent. So, again, if Andy Dalton's starting, I don't think this is a top 10 game of the regular season. But just with Matt Stafford, his first game as a Ram, and then Chicago possibly having the first game with Justin Fields. Even still, that Chicago Bears defense is so fun to watch with all the stars and all the talent they have going up against Sean McVay. That's just going to be a really fun game, I think, to watch. And I'm going to be nervous no matter who is starting at quarterback for that game. So based on just the NFL records and the win percentage from last season, the 5 hardest schedules in the NFL are the Steelers, the Ravens, the Bears, the Packers, and the Vikings. 3 NFC North teams on that list. Just I think has to do with they have some tough division matchups. The NFC North is playing the NFC West and the AFC North, 2 really good divisions. They're playing both of them next year, so that definitely has a lot to do with the overall strength of schedule. We also don't know the strength of schedule just because it's better to look at it when the season is completed, and then you can be like, okay, this team had the hardest schedule. All right, this team has played 3 teams with 1 losses in the first 8 games of the season. That's pretty impressive. So, again, we don't know where these teams are going to be at all, but that's what we have to work with so far. The top 5 easiest schedules in the league are the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Falcons, the Buccaneers, and the Dolphins. Really, I'm hoping Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith really can take advantage of that. The Buccaneers, I was pretty surprised by, but the Eagles, I really hope they take advantage of that easy schedule and really get a lot of reps for Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith. I hope they can take advantage of that. There's also one more note. The Packers have 4 primetime games right out the gate. They've got the Saints, game of the week, week 1, Monday Night Football versus the Lions, Sunday Night Football versus the 49ers, and they've got the CBS primetime game against the Steelers. Is this the league kind of doing some foreshadowing and predicting Aaron Rodgers will be in Green Bay and assuming that? I don't know, but they would have to flex some of those games out if Aaron Rodgers is not in a Packers uniform, because we are not going to watch. No one's going to want to watch Blake Bortles in 4 primetime games early in the season. I mean, I love Blake Bortles, but no, I don't think anyone wants to watch that. And the NFL would be foolish to kind of have all those primetime games. So I think they might know something. Who knows? I'm going to talk more about Aaron Rodgers later in the episode. But again, that was my NFL schedule recap, and I'm really excited for this NFL season. Before I get to the rest of the show, I'm going to get into a quick commercial break. Once again, you are listening to the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Wyatt Krieger. I'll be right back after this short word from our sponsors.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast presented to you by the Golden State Media Concepts. I'm your host, Wyatt Krieger. I just got done breaking down some of my favorite games for the 2021 NFL season after the schedule was just released this week. But there's some more NFL news I want to get to. And first and foremost, that is the Tim Tebow drama. The Tim Tebow sports cycle continues as he is expected to sign a 1-year deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not a quarterback, not playing baseball. He is now a tight end for Trevor Lawrence. And there's a lot to break down kind of when talking about Tim Tebow. The first being, he is 33 years old, and I don't see how well this can work out just looking at it from afar. But Tim Tebow's proved people wrong before. He said he was going to go play baseball and then ended up just being a very bad baseball player that floated around in the minor leagues. But he's obviously a freak athlete with just having the ability to play in the NFL and in the MLB. But he was not a good quarterback. He really couldn't throw. He was inaccurate. His mechanics were awful. And he somehow found his way to a playoff game. But he is 33, and now he's trying to make this transition to play a completely different position in the NFL at the highest level, and that is tight end. I think the unique aspect of this is just looking at it, and Urban Meyer is the new coach of the Jaguars. He is the only coach that I think would have done this in the NFL. If Tim Tebow had hit up any other coach saying, hey, I want to be a tight end, I'm trying this new position out, can I get a tryout? I don't think they give him a call back, and I don't think he has any chance to make the team. But nonetheless, Urban Meyer coached Tebow in Florida. They won a national championship together. Tim Tebow probably reached out and said, "Urban, I'm glad you're in the NFL. This is awesome. I wanted to make a comeback. I'm bored. I want to play some sports." That's probably what Tim Tebow said, right? And Urban Meyer was probably like, "All right, you want to try tight end?" And Tim Tebow was like, "Yeah, I can do that." No, I don't know how those conversations went down, but it's got to be a tough adjustment for Tim Tebow to make that transition. And who knows if he makes the team. He's going to go through training camp, so we'll be able to hear more about what he's able to do from a tight end's perspective. My odds are low that he makes the team and makes the opening day roster after all those cuts that they have to make, but who knows? Former NFL tight end Shannon Sharp said it's just going to be hard to, like, the pass catching aspect from when a lot of former NFL tight ends and NFL tight ends have been asked about this recently. They say the pass catching aspect won't be too hard of an adjustment. It's just all of the littler things that you have to do as a tight end, the shorter routes, the motioning in the offense, the blocking, being able to get set up, understanding all of the schemes from a tight end's perspective. I'm sure Tim Tebow has fantastic football knowledge. He's been around the sport his whole life. But playing tight end is completely different, and knowing how to block, when to block. Maybe he's going to be used as more of a receiving threat tight end primarily on different downs, but you're going to have to be able to block a little bit as a tight end. So that's what Shannon Sharp had to say about that. I think a lot of people respect his overall athleticism, but don't know necessarily how he'll do with this transition. Kellen Winslow, another former tight end, says he'll be able to catch really easily, but it's just the blocking and also getting hit that's going to be a really hard adjustment, because you're going to come across the middle, Tim Tebow, and you might take a shot from a linebacker, and you might be thinking to yourself, shoot, I haven't played in the NFL in a while. I was also a quarterback, so I wasn't taking hits like this all the time, and that might be just kind of like a little jolt of reality for him. I mean, Tim Tebow is a pretty big guy, but still getting hit like that at that consistent rate, I think, is going to be a little bit of a shell shock for the former quarterback. Overall, to me, this kind of seems like a money grab move, more bringing attention to your team and selling tickets, most of all. Now, he would have to start week one if you wanted to go that route, the attention in the selling tickets route, which I'm not putting past Urban Meyer, because it might not be a lot, but there will be a certain sector of fans in Jacksonville that are going to the games and being like, all right, let's go, it's Tebow time. Even though you have a quarterback that you just drafted number one overall, that should be enough intrigue, I think. But Tim Tebow, he brings fans out, and he puts people in the seats. So the main issue with me, is just that there probably are better tight ends out there that are not getting a shot, and Tim Tebow is getting this kind of favoritism. I guess it's the name of the game, just having the relationships and connections you can have in the NFL. that Tim Tebow has with Urban Meyer. But like I said, no other coach would have made this move this season, and it's going to be interesting to watch how it plays out in training camp, because he has the athletic ability, but again, I just don't see this ending well. And you had Tebow winning a playoff game in 2010. He won the division, couldn't really throw the ball, put together some magic, and you had the whole Tebowing saga. He really just took the NFL world by storm that year, even though he couldn't complete passes and had great defense and their team could run the ball, but he also was able to somehow make enough plays with his arm. But I just don't. It's more of a intrigue, and it provides attention and excitement for the NFL season more than anything, rather than actually looking at it from a pure football perspective and how he's going to be able to do. There was another signing recently, and that is Blake Bortles, who recently signed in Green Bay. So Blake Bortles, I'm going to get into the Aaron Rodgers drama, but the Packers just signed him. It's some pretty new news, but I think it's maybe a foreshadowing at preparing for life without Rodgers. The Packers also just didn't have another quarterback on their roster other than Jordan Love. So he's going to be a training camp arm. But Bortles has bounced around since making that AFC Championship game against the Patriots for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That was really fun time just to be a Blake Bortles fan, as I am. But he didn't cut it. He didn't cut it as a starting quarterback in the NFL. He couldn't be that consistent, and now he's bouncing around as a backup with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge that I think is very useful no matter what. So if Bortles is starting week 1, I think the Packers are in a whole nother world of trouble, but it's a good arm to have in Green Bay while you're waiting for Aaron Rodgers to come off this hiatus, or maybe come down from his earlier aggressions from this offseason, because I'm going to get into that next. But overall, this news means something, but not really much. It all depends on what Aaron Rodgers decides. So what is going to happen with this Aaron Rodgers drama? There's been some more reports coming out, more negativity from Aaron Rodgers towards the Packers. I thought the most interesting thing was that there was a Packers team group message that got leaked. And pretty much it was saying, Rodgers was saying in that group message how Brian Gutekunst, the Packers GM, is pretty much the same as Jerry Krause. Now, if you don't know who Jerry Krause is, he was the late GM of the Chicago Bulls that pretty much dismantled the entire Bulls team after they'd won 6 championships, 2 three-peats, and he was trying to blow the whole team up and take a lot of credit for a lot of the success that the Bulls had despite having Michael Jordan on your team. And there was a lot of drama with that. I encourage you to watch the Last Dance documentary that goes into all of that. But to compare Brian Gutekunst, Aaron Rodgers, for Aaron Rodgers to compare Brian Gutekunst to Jerry Krause, I think is very telling. And it's a sign maybe for what's to come with this relationship. For starters, I don't understand how you let this news leak to the media unless Aaron Rodgers somehow did it intentionally. But that's some pretty significant stuff. And you've seen some Packers players come out, like Devontae Adams, who had said he would really consider his position on the team and in the Packers organization if he said, quote, his guy, Aaron Rodgers, is not on the team. So you're already starting to see kind of that recoil from what could happen and the fallout from what could happen if Aaron Rodgers just holds out and doesn't want to play, which I think would be just devastating for the Packers. But again, to compare him to Jerry Krause, I think that's going to stick with me, because Michael Jordan, the star of the Bulls, really felt alienated by them, really felt disrespected after all the work that he had done. The Bulls could have won multiple more championships. I think it's stupid not to assume that, and Jerry Krause kind of got in the way, and the organization and the front office got in the way. So this seems to maybe be what is happening in Green Bay with just overall the draft selections and the personnel moves that they're making that Aaron Rodgers isn't happy with. But I think there's a few scenarios we got to look at with this Aaron Rodgers deal. The first being is Jordan Love. So that the Packers, this all started, it's the catalyst behind all of this is when they picked Jordan Love. There were multiple good receivers. They not only picked him, they traded up in the first round for Jordan Love. And there were a lot of good receivers on the board. There was Justin Jefferson they could have traded up for, who Aaron Rodgers has said he had really liked in that pre-draft process. Brandon Ayuk, the really speedy wide receiver for the 49ers, was available. And I believe there was one more receiver that they had their eye on. But they ended up trading for Jordan Love, the quarterback of the future. They wanted Love to sit behind Rodgers for however many years and be the guy, but Rodgers kind of took that differently and was like, hey guys, we need to win now. We just went to the AFC Championship game. We need, what are you doing to help me? And Aaron Rodgers obviously wants to win another Super Bowl at this point of his career. But this would all be less of a story if Jordan Love was good, and I just don't think he is. Now, there's not a lot of tape on this guy in the pros that you can look at, but it just doesn't look good. I honestly just don't think he's good. One, because of the Packers' overall tone during all of this. If the Packers were convinced that Jordan Love is the future, I don't think they'd be as distraught about possibly losing Rodgers as they are right now. And the most telling sign to me is that he was inactive for all of the games in 2020. That says a lot to me because when Patrick Mahomes was sitting behind Alex Smith, he was active for every game. And he didn't start. He started one of the games later in the year after they'd already had their playoff position locked up. But he was active. If Alex Smith got hurt, Patrick Mahomes would have gone in the game. Jordan Love was not good enough to be active on the active roster for any of their game days this year. And I think that just shows that during training camp or whatever evaluation process they saw, I know it wasn't a full offseason, which is another factor to look at here. But then also just signing Blake Bortles. If Jordan Love was that guy, was that dude that you thought he was, drafting him in the first round, trading up, he would be active, and he would also, there'd be more buzz around him. There'd be more buzz. There'd be more flashy plays that were made in training camp that really caught their eye. And we're honestly at this point kind of starting to see the damage control from the Packers coach and GM. They have come out and really expressed their passion for Aaron Rodgers. I know Matt LaFleur has said that we need Aaron Rodgers back. The GM is saying that they're figuring it out. I know Aaron Rodgers initially wanted a contract extension, but I think there's just a lot more to it and a lot of decisions that have kind of built up to this point. It's kind of the way Adam Schefter had reported it, even though, how about this move by Schefter? Because Adam Schefter had originally released he had originally released his all this news about Aaron Rodgers on draft day, the morning of draft day, when all the people were wondering what's going on in the NFL. He released that right then, and that was definitely strategic because there's that news didn't all culminate to that one point, and he even said that after the fact. But that was a savvy move by Adam Schefter as a newsbreaker to just drop that right then. And he had said there was a culmination of things from stemming back to last year, probably had a lot to do with the Matt LaFleur coaching decision in the playoffs. And then just the overall personnel moves that they have made that Aaron Rodgers has just not liked. And I think overall, like Adam Schefter had said, it's a buildup of a bunch of different things. So again, he wanted that contract extension. There was some debate about that, and then it kind of just boiled up after that. But again, going back to Jordan Love, I think it's really hard to be inactive in the NFL. It means, one, that the coaches didn't trust you to go onto the field at any point, no matter what. And I just think like I said, we would have heard more out of training camp if he was something special. But again, who knows? Because sometimes quarterbacks take a long time to develop. Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre for quite some time, but we never know. So the first scenario I see happening is the easy scenario. It's Rodgers staying in Green Bay. So if Jordan Love really does stink as a quarterback, Aaron Rodgers definitely knows it. I mean, he saw him in person for a whole season. They were in the same quarterback room. And Aaron Rodgers kind of has all the leverage in this situation. I've always thought that the talent in sports has all the power, even though the front offices are the people making the decision-making or doing the decision-making. But Aaron Rodgers is the one with the talent and with the power, because he is just one of the more unique quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. And there hasn't been anything like him. And so you have Rodgers with either he can demand a trade, he can sit out, or he can stay, or he can who knows what he can do. I just think Rodgers in this scenario has the power. If I were running the Packers, I would fire Brian Gutekunst right now, because it seems to be just the root of all the issues that are going on. And look, Brian Gutekunst could be a fine GM, could have acquired a bunch of talent with all the decisions he's made, but it's Aaron Rodgers. If you're going to have Aaron Rodgers for the next 4 years, I'd rather have that than any general manager who's not going to be on the field. So, like I said, that NFC Championship game decision-making, I think, is another big factor that has stuck with Rodgers throughout. But him staying is the most likely scenario. It's the least jaw-dropping news that could happen out of this. But this just feels very unique to me, I think. And if Rodgers stays, the Packers are going to be good. The Packers are probably going to be competing for an NFC title again in 2021. You still have Aaron Jones. You still have Devontae Adams. You still have Robert Tonyan. But the rest of that roster offensively, you still have David Bakhtiari, but you lost your all-pro center. The other receivers are just not that special. And I don't know. I really think that that's going to play a huge factor in whether or not Aaron Rodgers is staying next year. Is if they can maybe get someone this offseason that can kind of sway him, or if that GM is still there. And I don't know. That might be the deciding factor. I'm going to get into the rest of these scenarios for Aaron Rodgers in a second. But first, we have a quick commercial break. Once again, thank you for listening to the GSMC Football Podcast presented to you by the Golden State Media Concepts. I'm your host, Wyatt Krieger. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at GSMC_football and follow us on Facebook. Visit our website at gsmcpodcast.com. If you want to look at all of our sports podcasts, you can go to gsmcpodcast.com/sports. But I will get into more Aaron Rodgers conversations after the break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast, presented to you by the Golden State Media Concepts. I'm your host, Wyatt Krieger, now back for my third segment of the day. When I just left off, we were talking Aaron Rodgers, and I am breaking down all of the scenarios that could possibly happen with this seemingly endless news story that started on draft night and has continued to boil over and create headlines in the NFL for the last 2-3 weeks now. So my first scenario was that probably the most likely, but I don't know. No, I don't think anyone knows at this point what's going on in Aaron Rodgers' mind. But it was Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay, figuring it out with the GM and head coach, or maybe, like I suggested, firing that GM, and then that being the one thing that keeps Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. For me, that would seem like the smartest move for the Packers here, but overall, it's going to be very intriguing as a Bears fan to see what happens. I am waiting for him to get traded to somewhere. So, my next scenario is a trade. Green Bay trading Aaron Rodgers. As crazy as that sounds, it might be the most logical move for the Packers if things get to a certain point. Now, if you look at the Packers' history, and when Brett Favre was being traded from Green Bay, they got nothing. They pretty much got nothing. Brett Favre had retired in 2008 because there was so much turmoil between him and the front office of the Packers and the whole Packers organization. And there was just clear butting heads going on throughout the end of his tenure there in Green Bay. There's also something to note at that point that Aaron Rodgers was ready to. He had sat for a while then, and fans were ready, coaches were ready. I think he was ready to finally step into that role as the Packers' starting quarterback. And so this situation is really different because there's no one. I already talked about Jordan Love, but there's no one really waiting under Rodgers that Packers fans can point to and say, "Hey, we're fine, Aaron. You go run along. We got this." And there's not. And when the Packers traded Brett Favre, they received a conditional pick from the Jets. That was it for Brett Favre, a Hall of Fame quarterback like Brett Favre, for a conditional pick. So I don't know who was making the decisions at that point for Green Bay, but you have to think that is going to play somewhat of a factor in this if Aaron Rodgers is holding out, or if he is not communicating with the team, or if he just says he doesn't want to play, like I said, or if he decides to go host Jeopardy. I will also get into that later. Then the Packers would be dumb not to get as much as they possibly can out of him this year. And there's also the chance that the Packers won't be able to get as much from him next year. So when you look at the teams that were trying to trade for Aaron Rodgers right before leading up to the draft, the 49ers were about to give them a boatload of picks and Trey Lance, who they got with the third overall pick. Which all the scenarios that I saw, the trade scenarios before the draft, are way more appealing than just having Aaron Rodgers gone and then not being able to get any compensation for a former MVP. So I think that factor that could end up factoring into this and how this plays out in the offseason is that just the Packers wanting to learn from their past mistakes and not getting the full compensation when a player just doesn't want to be there. Because, again, it would be really bad to wait too long. His value is really high right now, and if you wait, you could risk another situation like Favre's. Because right now you're going to get 2 to 4 draft picks, 2 to 4 first-round picks, and probably 2 to 4 really high-quality players. When you look at what the Bears were about to trade for Russell Wilson, when you look at what the 49ers were rumored to have suggested, and you look at what a lot of teams right now in the NFL would give up to have Aaron Rodgers on their team, I think right now would be the time to do it. But again, that is just a crazy even sentence to even say, is that the Packers should trade Aaron Rodgers. But you never know. You really never know with how these things could turn out. Now, the Broncos seem like the most likely suitor at this point. They have a really good team. If they had Aaron Rodgers, I mean, Drew Lock was a mess last year. And if you had Aaron Rodgers to that team, you have some great weapons. You have a fantastic defense, and you have a head coach in Vic Fangio who Aaron Rodgers really respects. And that's another thing that needs to be noted is Aaron Rodgers is, in the past, when he played against him, when he was defensive coordinator for the Bears, Aaron Rodgers has always had a unique respect for Vic Fangio's defenses and how much trouble they've given him over the years, back when he was on the 49ers and then back when he was on Chicago. So I think there's that. So there's that overall just attraction there. And like I said, they have a really good team. They've got some weapons in the running game in Melvin Gordon. And then you've got some great receivers in Courtland Sutton. KJ Hamler's a young prospect that you could have. That's really appealing, I think. And just an overall great football culture in Denver that has won a lot of games. And the fans are incredibly passionate. You're living in a cool place like Denver. So I think that really matters. Another team is the Las Vegas Raiders. They are another likely candidate. This fit I wouldn't see working as well as the other one in Denver, but I don't know. John Gruden might try to get too hands-on, and I think if he was on the Denver, then Vic Fangio would kind of just let him completely. I mean, Vic Fangio's a defensive specialist. He would give the Aaron Rodgers the complete keys to the offense, and he'd say, "You do what you got to do. I'm gonna control the defense. I'm gonna do my job as head coach, but you do what you have to do to win us games as your quarterback." Now, if the Raiders, John Gruden, I think, would try to get really hands-on, maybe too involved in some ways with Rodgers, and that could end up to some, I don't know, chaos. It might be the right word. Some more candidates. I don't know. I think there's a lot of teams that should be calling the Packers and getting them really overall just a feel for what they can provide. Maybe these are some long shots. These are some long shots that are probably never going to happen. I haven't looked into these teams' financial situations, whether they can afford or what kind of draft capital they'd be willing to give up. But the Giants, you don't know what the Giants are going to do with Daniel Jones. The Saints, you could have 4 more years of prime Aaron Rodgers instead of having Jameis Winston. That's a possibility. I couldn't see the Texans doing it. Their organization, Aaron Rodgers is going to go somewhere that he wants to go. And that's the other thing I think that needs to be noted is he's going to go somewhere that he wants. So I think the Texans would try. Who knows, maybe a Deshaun Watson swap if everything gets kind of figured out there. But who knows? That'd be interesting if Aaron Rodgers is traded. Just what a story that would be. That would take over the news world for a while. My third scenario that I could see happening is going to sound crazy. I'm going to put a little disclaimer here. It's going to sound crazy. It's the least likely scenario out of all of them. But it's Aaron Rodgers holding out and then even possibly retiring and going to a career of hosting Jeopardy if the Packers do not want to get rid of him and if he is that unhappy in Green Bay. So, before you say, okay, this is ludicrous, Aaron Rodgers is a competitor, he wants to win a Super Bowl, he's got 4 more good years left, he needs to get as much as he can out of these last 4 years, and he can still host Jeopardy after all this is said and done, which is true. But I bet a lot of you didn't know how much money Alex Trebek actually made as Jeopardy's host for the last 20 years or however long he hosted it. Rest in peace to Alex Trebek. by the end of his Jeopardy career, Alex Trebek was making 18. I've looked this up on a lot of different sites. He was making between 18 and 20 million, around $18 million a year for hosting Jeopardy, which is not. That's just a large amount of money, and if you really want to get crazy, I think this scenario could make some sense, especially if Rodgers has that type of personality that we think he does, that really spiteful, someone that's going to hold a grudge and someone that is going to kind of hold their ground in these arguments. So Aaron Rodgers would probably be making somewhere, he would not be making $18 million a year right off the bat, but if Aaron Rodgers was the full-time host of Jeopardy, he'd probably make anywhere between $10 to $14 million a year, and he doesn't have to get hit. It sounds great, and if you ask me, that sounds awesome. You know, he's done everything you can as a quarterback in terms of winning a Super Bowl, and there's still some stats he probably wants to break, and he definitely wants to get another Super Bowl. But you make $10 to $14 million a year, and you don't have to get hit. I mean, sign me up for that. And you just have to read some questions on a TV show. I'm pretty sure the way Jeopardy works is they record a bunch of them in a row. So that doesn't leave out the idea that Aaron Rodgers could explore a career elsewhere in terms of TV, in terms of broadcasting, in terms of going the Tony Romo route, in terms of being an analyst. I mean, there's a lot of ways he could go with this. So if he is steadfast on not playing in Green Bay, and Green Bay just is not willing to trade him, this is the next scenario that I see playing out. Now, this would shock the world, and like I said, Aaron Rodgers probably wants to compete and get the most out of his prime years that he still has. I mean, he just won MVP. So this is very far-fetched, I think. But if he's that grudge, spite type guy that he is known to be, then this scenario, I think, makes a lot of sense. So overall, I think he's going to be on the Packers week 1. How that gets figured out is a mystery to me. It honestly is. The speculation is really fun, and I like getting into all these different scenarios that we could see happen. But I feel like the Packers are really desperate right now, and they're going to try everything possible to please him, to keep him, whether that's making changes in the front office personnel, whether that's getting free agents whether it's, I don't know, changing the overall direction of the team. I don't know what they're going to do, but they have to do something, and they can't just let Aaron Rodgers walk for nothing. So I do think it's important to just kind of understand the Jordan Love situation and how if he was able to show some potential, then I don't think any of this would be that big of a deal. It obviously would, just because he's the former MVP moving on from his team, but the Packers, I think, would be able to move on from him better if they really truly believed that they had something in Jordan Love. Because right now, you're going to go into the season with Blake Bortles, Jordan Love, and Aaron Rodgers that is probably going to sit out and not show up for the first few weeks of training camp, if I could predict anything. So, similarly to the Deshaun Watson situation, this is a nightmare for the Packers. That would be a nightmare for the Packers if he just straight up left. So, Aaron Rodgers, we'll keep an eye on that. We're going to keep an eye on that throughout the offseason. But I'm now going to talk about a really important, kind of hot, constant topic in the debate in the NFL today. And it's become more of a trend in recent years. And the question is if rookie quarterbacks should start right away, and which ones are we going to see shine right away in week 1? Because this is something that has evolved over time. You have guys like Patrick Mahomes that are great successes after sitting out a year. He sat a year behind Alex Smith. You had Aaron Rodgers, benefited greatly from sitting. A lot of people say that no matter what, if you sit, you're more likely to be better. But a lot of guys have also busted that narrative early on in their careers. You had guys like Justin Herbert last year. They wanted Tyrod Taylor to be the starter. They wanted Justin Herbert to sit and wait under the wings, learn, soak up all that knowledge. And Tyrod Taylor ended up having an unfortunate injury that caused Justin Herbert to go in. But Justin Herbert never lost that job after that point. And it was obvious to everyone who was watching football that Justin Herbert could have started week 1. And there was no point in all of the Tyrod Taylor conversation and all of that benching and the sitting behind. So it's different. It's weird because every QB is different. Every quarterback develops at different paces, and there's a lot of factors that go into this that are out of their control. Whether how good the coaching is, how good the offensive structure is, how good the players are around you, and if you don't have good protection or players and weapons, then is that only damaging you to rookie quarterback to be playing right away? So I want to get into the rookie quarterbacks this year and really just talk about what rookie quarterbacks I see starting right away and which quarterbacks I see sitting from the get-go in week 1. But I think there's a lot of debate to be had with some of these guys. So I first wanted to look at some of the brighter young stars in the NFL and whether they sat or not in the first week of their NFL career, or if they sat for a whole season. You had Joe Burrow. He started right away for Cincinnati. He was a guy who was NFL ready from the start. Justin Herbert, another one I just talked about, he was ready to go from the start. Patrick Mahomes was not necessarily ready from the start in the eyes of Kansas City, but Alex Smith was in Kansas City for quite some time. And when you compare this to kind of like Andy Dalton situation with Justin Fields, Andy Dalton just got to Chicago as well. So although he's a veteran and he has the experience, Alex Smith, I think Kansas City, the organization of Kansas City kind of owed Alex Smith something in some sort of some aspects. And so they were going to do one last ride with Alex Smith. Let's see what they can do. They're a good enough team. They get to the playoffs. But at the end of that season, they were like, okay, we've got our guy, and Patrick Mahomes is ready. So that was a unique situation where Patrick Mahomes, who's the best quarterback in the NFL right now, sat for a full season. But I think for most of that season, everyone in the Chiefs organization knew that Patrick Mahomes could have played right away if he wanted to. Deshaun Watson was another interesting kind of case study about this. He was not slated to start week 1. And guess who was? Tom Savage, noted great starting quarterback Tom Savage. I'm being sarcastic, obviously, but Tom Savage started week 1. And Deshaun Watson sat, and it took Deshaun Watson one half before he saw the field. Tom Savage was benched at halftime, and they were like, all right, what are we doing? We have Deshaun Watson here. He just played for Clemson. He just won a national championship against Alabama. Let's get him in the game. I don't know what we're doing with Tom Savage. So Deshaun Watson is one example of someone who was not slated to start week 1, and the team kind of just quickly realized, okay, we need to get this guy in there. Because really this all depends on what quarterback is going to provide the best chance to win. And with a lot of these coaches, some of them on the hot seat, some of them not, but you want to play the guy that gives your team the best chance to win. Now, if you have that kind of job security and that foundation, then you might be more inclined to make more moves for the future and make moves under the guise of, let's develop this guy, let's make sure we're doing everything we can to develop him the best we can so that when he is ready to go, he's fully ready and he can just attack. So some depends on what happens in the offseason. Some depends on the guy that's the veteran QB that's kind of taking the younger quarterback under his wing. But if the player shows enough promise in the offseason, then you go into the season and not start that player, then that leash is just going to be shorter and shorter. So Trevor Lawrence He's the first rookie quarterback I'll talk about. He's going to start right away. Not much really of a surprise here. I'm excited to see Urban Meyer's offense. What kind of concepts we're going to see from him. What kind of down the field attack we're going to see. Is it going to be more of like a college style offense? But nonetheless, Urban Meyer is a great offensive mind. So I think he'll be able to figure it out and scheme up an offense that fits Trevor Lawrence's play style really well. Zach Wilson. He's a guy that's going to start week 1. There's no one else to start in New York, and there's no one kind of waiting there to guide him. The Jets' offense is a descendant offense of Kyle Shanahan. It's in the Kyle Shanahan family tree. Mike LaFleur, their new offensive coordinator, was in San Francisco, was the passing game coordinator in San Francisco. So he's going to have that Kyle Shanahan type offense where things are going to be really simple, and the things are going to be really simplified for the quarterback, and you just got to find the open guy. There's normally 1 to 2 really reads you have to make, and you really just have to find the open guy that the play was designed to, because there's a lot of intricacies and decisions to all these play or in decision making with all these that goes into all these plays where you see Kyle Shanahan offenses, guys are just wide open. And whether it was the way the routes were combined, whether it was the way that the play was blocked, I think Kyle Shanahan needs a quarterback to be able to think quickly, get the ball out of his hands quickly, and make those decisions at a high rate. So if Zach Wilson can do that in New York, and if Mike LaFleur can kind of replicate that in New York, then I'm all for it, and I think Zach Wilson will be a great fit for that type of offense. He's got the arm talent. He can get the ball out quick, and it's going to be up to what that team can kind of build around Wilson. So then we have the third quarterback that got taken off the board, and that is Trey Lance, who got picked to the 49ers. I don't see Lance starting week 1, but this is going to be a how is Jimmy G doing type scenario, because I think the 49ers are going to be able to win games with Jimmy G. I mean, they made it to a Super Bowl his last fully healthy season, and Lance only started 19 college games. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a development curve there. Whether or not Trey Lance is NFL ready, I don't know, because Trey Lance was labeled as one of the smarter quarterbacks in the entire draft. But just the overall experience, I think, sticks out to me. And we'll see. I think we'll see the 49ers going to have some trust in Jimmy G. But I will say, if the 49ers come out and Jimmy G doesn't look good, he's got that first-round pick lurking over his shoulder, then who knows what can happen. Because I would not be surprised if we see Lance around the midway point of the season if the 49ers are not playing up to expectations. Because, like I said, they need to win now. So before I get into the rest of the rookie quarterbacks and then some of my final draft grades, we've got a quick commercial break. Once again, you are listening to the GSMC Football Podcast presented by the Golden State Media Concepts. As always, follow us on Twitter at GSMC_football. Follow us on Facebook. Visit our website at gsmcpodcast.com/sports if you want to get more of the sports entertainment, but you can also find any topic that you could possibly want on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'll be right back after this short word from our sponsors.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast presented to you by the Golden State Media Concepts. I'm your host, Wyatt Krieger. I just got done covering the first three quarterbacks that were selected into the draft and whether or not I think they should and will or will not start in week one. So I covered how Trevor Lawrence is going to be the week one starter in Jacksonville. Zach Wilson, the same in New York. Trey Lance, not the same situation. He's got a good quarterback in front of him that made it to the Super Bowl with the team that he's currently on, with that roster, that foundation of that roster. So I think that they're going to take a little time, but I do think that leash for Garoppolo will be pretty short. But now we got to get into Justin Fields, because that is the quarterback who has been talked about a lot this week in terms of whether or not he will start right away. So, will the Bears let Andy Dalton ride this season out, or will they just give the keys to Justin Fields if he shows out during training camp, and if he shows out in the offseason? Will they let him take the offense? And this is a really tough question, I honestly think, because the Bears' plan from the get-go has been to start Dalton week one, but these things can always change, and you never really know what these coaches and what these GMs are really thinking and what their thought process really is. If Dalton provides the Bears with the best chance to win games, and that's what Matt Nagy truly believes, then he will play week one. But that's another thing, is Matt Nagy's job is not certain after this year. And so if things start to slide too much, I think Matt Nagy will start to feel the pressure from the fans, and then just the overall organization will want to see Justin Fields showcase his talents. So the job security, that plays a factor. But the more and more I think about this, I think Justin Fields should start week one, and I think he will. I really do. I think looking at his overall body of work, he has the poise, he has the toughness, he has the work ethic, he's got the big arm, and he's got the mobility with 4.4 speed to make plays right away. And I think he'll show that right away from day one in training camp. Now, I do think the Bears can be somewhat competitive with Andy Dalton, but that's not saying that they'll be able to win a bunch of games with him right away. We saw how good Andy Dalton was with the Cowboys with all those weapons around him. And if the defense is playing really well, they're creating a lot of turnovers, and Andy Dalton is staying within the offense, and he's getting the ball out, making quick decisions, and he's throwing it on time, and he's being accurate, and he's not turning it over, then I see no reason for them to jump the gun and switch to Fields. Because they've said this throughout, that the best case scenario is you're winning games with Andy Dalton, your team looks good, you look competitive, the roster looks talented, and everyone in the organization, everyone on the team still knows that they've got their guy in Justin Fields. Because that's what was happening with Patrick Mahomes and with Alex Smith. But like I said before, I think this is a different scenario. And Andy Dalton hasn't been in Chicago for 4 or 5 seasons like Alex Smith was. He hasn't. He just got there too. So whether you want to say the inexperience with the offense might play a role, they both have had the playbook for relatively the same amount of time. And I think the football player Justin Fields is going to pick this up really quickly, and teammates are going to want to see him in the game. Now, you also have to look at the fans' perspective, because I think fans really want to see him. But overall, every situation is different, and every situation has to kind of depend on what is the coach doing to develop this quarterback. What is this offense the right fit? Is the roster around this quarterback good enough to even risk starting him right away? And because my overall mindset about this is they should start right away, and it's moving more towards that as the years go on. Like, why is Trevor Lawrence somehow more fit to start week one than compared to Justin Fields? Just because he was picked a little higher They've had the same amount of college experience. You could argue maybe Fields has some mechanical issues that he needs to work out before he's ready to start. But overall, I think throwing them into the fire and letting them kind of learn and get a feel for the NFL on the fly, I think it's more useful in the long run. But again, every situation is different. Who knows what the right thing is to do? That's going to be a crazy thing to monitor throughout training camp and also just throughout the Bears organization. Now, the next first-round quarterback that was taken is Mac Jones. This is the final one that I will kind of discuss. Will Mac Jones start week 1? I do not think so. I would be shocked if he started week 1. I'd be shocked if he started really at all this year. Now, if Cam Newton plays really bad and you start to see him skip some passes and he's not able to really just get the offense going, then that pressure builds. But I think the way the New England offense is kind of constructed, I think that offense is really complex, and overall it takes years to fully develop. You haven't seen a quarterback kind of just be able to come in and play right away in that offense ever. Tom Brady sat for years behind Drew Bledsoe. So when looking at the Patriots, I think it takes at least a full season before you can fully grasp all those concepts and all of the kind of timing and the patterns that you need to know to be able to execute it, to be able to get the ball out quick and be able to understand where people are going to be and how really Bill Belichick wants you to operate it. So I'm really hoping for Cam Newton. I really hope he plays well, so we just don't have to break down this kind of process all year long for Mac Jones. But when QBs kind of start right away, it's all about fit, and we haven't seen a quarterback start in New England ever, like right away. We really just haven't. So overall, I'm expecting Cam Newton to have a big bounce back year. I think another year in that offense, a full offseason in that offense, I think will help him a lot. Whether or not his shoulder can hold up and whether or not his arm strength is still there and the accuracy is still there is yet to be seen. But I'm expecting a big turnout from Cam Newton this year. So now I'm going to get into some of my draft grades. So I graded all of the teams' drafts throughout the year, after taking a step back and looking at it, and I've power ranked my top 5 best graded drafts and then my worst 5 best graded drafts. So the first draft I'm going to talk about is my number 1 favorite draft from the 2021 NFL event that happened last Thursday. The Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns, I gave them an A- draft grade. You know, I saw them in the first round. They got Greg Newsome, one of my favorite corners in the draft, probably my second or third favorite corner in this draft. I loved that pick, and it really solidified a need that they had. Getting Greg Newsome on the other side of Denzel Ward, I think, was huge for that secondary. Their safeties have been an issue. They went and got a safety this offseason from the Rams. I think this secondary and this defense as a whole is going to be incredible. They got Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in the second round. He was a first rounder through and through. And I was wondering the second day, I thought for sure he'd be gone on the first day. But the second day, when Adam Schefter had reported a few days after that, I guess his draft stock fell because there was a heart condition that came up later on in the draft process, and it hurt him. It hurt his draft stock. So a lot of teams were scared of that, weren't sure how serious that was, and weren't willing to take that risk. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that big of an issue, and obviously the Browns didn't think so because they used a second-round pick on him, and I just thought that was a fantastic pick. This defense is going to be so legit and so good on all 3 levels that the Browns might be the third best team in the NFL. They might be the third best team in the AFC as well, but we're going to see right away. I believe they play the Chiefs week 1. That was another great game I didn't get to mention earlier on in the show, but they play the Chiefs week 1 in what should be Fantastic game, a rematch of the AFC Championship or the AFC Championship semifinals last year. That was a game I thought the Browns easily could have won, should have won. Patrick Mahomes got hurt in that game. You had Chad Henne come out and get that first down for the Chiefs, which was just a ridiculous game. There was so much going on. And I thought if a few different calls go the Browns' way, then they are in that AFC Championship game. So the Browns, I give them an A-. The Jets, I give them an A- as well. I thought they had a great draft. They got their quarterback for the future in Zach Wilson. They solidified the inside of their offensive line by taking Elijah Vera-Tucker, the best non-tackle O-lineman in the draft, which was a clear need for them. And they added Mekhi Becton last year, so having that kind of young duo to solidify that offensive line for the next few years is huge. They're also able to get Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss, which is one of the best receivers in the draft, and I think a lot of fans are really excited about the prospect of Elijah Moore teaming up with Zach Wilson. They added UNC running back Michael Carter in the 4th round, another great skill position add later in the draft. They thought they were aggressive, and they kind of addressed every single need that they had on their team in some aspect. Not saying that their roster is completely filled out yet, but if these guys can develop, then this team should be really scary in a few years. I had to do it. I gave the Chicago Bears a B+. They got some incredible value in drafting Justin Fields at number 11. It's the biggest need in the franchise, and they finally got their guy. I thought they played the draft board excellently. They got Tevin Jenkins, who was a first-rounder through and through, and he fell to the second round. Pace saw that they needed a tackle for the future, and he went up and got him. I think he's going to start right away and will be there forever. They also got guys like Khalil Herbert and Daz Newsome, 2 6th-round picks that I think are hidden gems and guys that are very skillful in all facets of the game. They can contribute on special teams, and they make plays. Most of all, I got to watch a lot of them last year in college. And they got Larry Boron in the 5th round, the Missouri tackle. With their current tackle situation, Tevin Jenkins is likely going to start, but I wouldn't be surprised if Boron starts too, depending on Jermaine Ifedi, who has been a problem in Chicago for the last year. But I think they like Boron a lot, and I think Bears fans might be surprised that he can start right away. So the Chargers, I gave them a B. They got my favorite offensive lineman in the draft in Rashawn Slater. They got Asante Samuel Jr. in round 2. That was great value for that pick. And they added a solid edge rusher with in the 4th round, and then got another wideout in Josh Palmer. Chargers seem to be able to find wide receivers throughout the draft at any time, so I think Josh Palmer is another guy to look out for. They've really done a good job at developing those guys. And overall, they needed to protect Herbert and address defense, and that's what they did in the draft. The Dolphins, I gave them a B as my 5th best draft of the year. They just had so many picks, and I just love the kind of prospects of having so much talent on their roster. They got Jalen Waddle at 6, even though I would have taken Devontae Smith there, but they got Jalen Waddle. They added Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher out of Miami, but arguably the best edge rusher in the entire draft at 18. They got Javon Holland, a safety out of Oregon. Again, touted as the best safety in this draft. I think he's going to be really good. They got Liam Eichenberg, offensive tackle at Notre Dame, someone who's going to be able to contribute right away. They added a tight end in the 3rd, 2 more picks in the 7th, just overall using that draft capital, using those past trades to acquire talent, and they really have exactly that. So, worst draft grades, I got the Packers with a C+. They went cornerback in round 1. They didn't address the offensive line. They tried to do that in the 2nd round with Josh Myers, the center out of Ohio State. But to me, that kind of seemed like patching up a really big hole, a really big leak on your roster with some duct tape. And I don't know, because you lost Corey Linsley, and then now you drafted Josh Myers out of Ohio State. Is he going to be able to perform to the standard that Corey Linsley set with Aaron Rodgers? I don't know. They finally got a receiver in Amari Rodgers in the 3rd round, which I didn't hate that pick, but overall just nothing really stuck out to me. And the needs that were addressed weren't addressed in the ways that I thought they were going to be. So Packers, C+. The Texans, I also gave them a C+. Really just, I think it kind of reflects the situation the South Texans are in. They don't have much draft capital. They didn't have a pick till the third round, trading all those picks for Laramie Tunsil back with Miami. So they're just feeling the wrath of Bill O'Brien's tenure as GM. They got Davis Mills, the quarterback out of Stanford, who I don't think will be that good unless, if he is, it's not going to be for a while. And odds are he's not as good as Devontae or Deshaun Watson, who knows if he's going to lace him up in Houston next season. They got a tight end, Brevin Jordan, out of Miami. They also got Garrett Waller, the linebacker out of TCU, which I didn't hate that pick, but overall, not much to work with in Houston, and just they didn't make any big moves like they could have, I think. My third, I gave the Raiders a C-. Really, this comes down to how they picked in the first round. They got Alex Leatherwood out of Alabama when I thought there were a lot of other tackles available. They took Trevon Moehrig, another safety. They've picked a lot of safety. They picked another safety in the third round, which I thought just didn't make sense considering they have Jonathan Abrams. So it's like, how many safeties do you need? I get it that they need defensive back help, and who knows if they want to utilize those guys in different ways. But overall, John Gruden and Mike Mayock have not done a great job drafting. I gave the Saints a C- grade. Again, nothing really stuck out to me. I thought there were some different avenues they could have gone. I really thought they should have traded up for a quarterback in the first round. They got Peyton Turner, defensive end out of Houston. And in round 2, they got a Ohio State linebacker in Pete Werner, who I don't think has a lot of really tremendous upside. They drafted a quarterback in Ian Book in the 4th round, who I think is going to be a bust. But even then, he was going to be a backup quarterback throughout his time in the NFL anyways, so who knows. But overall, nothing special from the Saints. The Seahawks, again, a team that just did not have too many picks, a lot to do with the trade for Jamal Adams. But they drafted Dwayne Eskridge, the wide receiver out of Western Michigan, in the 2nd round, which I thought there were better guys available. I really did. Guys like De'Ami Brown in Washington were available, and they went with a smaller school wide receiver, but they've had some success drafting guys from smaller schools, so I'm not going to really argue that. Really, the Seahawks just didn't have many picks and didn't do much with them. So that wraps up my draft talk. I loved this episode of the GSMC Football Podcast. I hope you did too. Thank you so much for listening, and again, I'll be back soon with more coverage of the NFL, more coverage of the Aaron Rodgers drama, and all the other storylines that are soon to come. Once again, follow us on Twitter at GSMC_football. Follow us on Facebook. Visit our website at gsmcpodcast.com. Like, subscribe, review, rate, anything you can. We really appreciate it. And I hope you guys all have a great weekend.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.